My grandfather said you needed a wife. That's the first thing she ever said to me. No hello. No name. Just that, over a bucket of cut dahlias, in the middle of a Saturday morning market with about 40 people close enough to hear it. I was holding a paper carton of eggs and a bag of Gus's blood pressure pills. I remember that because I nearly dropped both. She didn't look embarrassed. That was the part that got me. She looked like she'd said something completely normal, like she'd told me the peonies were $3 a stem. She stood there with her hands wet from the flower water, waiting, like the ball was somehow in my court now. "Excuse me," I said. "Your grandfather." "Gus. He comes by on Thursdays." She wiped her hands on her apron. "He told me his grandson moved back to town, and that his grandson needed a wife, and that I should keep an eye out." "He told you to keep an eye out." "For a wife," she said. "For you." Let me back up. My name is Owen Pratt. I'm 36 years old. I teach woodshop at the same high school I graduated from, which is the kind of sentence that used to embarrass me and doesn't anymore. 9 months ago, I packed everything I owned into a truck and drove 300 miles back to the town I swore I'd never live in again. I did it for my grandfather. He's 84. He fell in his kitchen last winter and broke his hip, and there was nobody close enough to help, and I was the only one without a good reason to say no. So that's what I was. A grandson back home buying eggs. I was not a man in the market for a wife. I want that on the record. Gus is fine, I told her. He doesn't need a matchmaker. He didn't say he needed one, she smiled a little. He said you did. I should tell you about Gus, because everyone assumes the wrong thing. When you hear a guy moved home to take care of his grandfather, you picture something sad. A hospital bed in the living room. A man wasting away. Somebody spooning soup and waiting for the end. That's not Gus. Gus is loud. Gus does the crossword in pen and argues with the answers when he's wrong. He watches game shows and yells at the contestants. He has strong opinions about how I load the dishwasher, and about the mayor, and about a woman named Dolores who beat him at bingo in 1998, and, according to him, cheated. His hip is healing. He walks with a cane he decorated with a bumper sticker that says, "Honk, if you love me." He is the most alive person I know, and he is going to outlive us all. And the only thing wrong with him is that he cannot mind his own business to save his life. Which is how I ended up standing in front of a florist who'd been recruited into his schemes. "Look," I said, "I appreciate whatever he told you. But I'm good." "Really?" "Okay," she said. And then she just went back to trimming stems. Like the conversation was over. Like she'd delivered a package and signed for it and had no further interest in the contents. That threw me more than the wife thing did. Because I had my whole speech ready. I had the polite deflection, the small laugh, the exit line. I was prepared to be gently uninterested at a woman I'd never met. And she wasn't even going to give me the chance. She'd said her piece and moved on to her flowers. I stood there for a second too long. "What's your name?" I asked. She looked up. "Lena." "Owen." "I know," she snipped a stem. "Your grandfather's told me about you for 2 months. I feel like I already know you didn't finish your coffee this morning, and you leave your shoes by the door." I did leave my shoes by the door. I did not finish my coffee. "He talks a lot," I said. "He does." She wrapped a bunch of white flowers in brown paper, quick and practiced, and handed them across the table to me. "Take these. He likes the ranunculus. Don't tell him I gave them to you. He'll think it means something." "Does it mean something?" "It means your grandfather is my best customer and I'd like to keep him happy." She almost smiled again. "Go home, Owen. Your eggs are getting warm." I took the flowers. I want to be honest about something, because if I skip it, none of the rest makes sense. I hadn't wanted anything in a long time. That sounds dramatic. I don't mean it dramatically. I mean the wanting part of me had gone quiet, the way a room goes quiet when you unplug the refrigerator, and only then realize it had been humming the whole time. There'd been someone. Before. Her name doesn't matter for this, And I'm not going to make her the villain, because she wasn't one. We were together for 4 years. I thought we were building something. I'd started looking at rings. I'd even sketched a shelf for her books, the way I sketch everything, in the margins of a lesson plan. And she sat me down one night at our own kitchen table and told me, very kindly, that she'd met someone at work, and that it had been going on for a while, and that she was sorry. The kindness was the worst part. She was so gentle about it. Like she was putting down an old dog. What it did to me wasn't heartbreak, exactly. I've had heartbreak. This was quieter. It taught me a lesson I didn't ask to learn, which is that you can do everything right. Show up every day. Be the steady one. Be the man who fixes the sink and remembers the anniversary, and it counts for nothing if the other person's already looking out the window. After that, I stopped looking out windows myself. I stopped trying. I told myself I was fine, and mostly I believed it, and the belief got easier the longer I lived alone. Alone is safe. Alone doesn't sit you down at a kitchen table. Then Gus fell and I came home, and my whole life became small and manageable and safe. Eggs and pills and crosswords and a standing appointment with a bingo grudge. I liked it that way. There was nothing in a life like that could look out a window and decide I wasn't enough. Nobody to disappoint. Nothing left to lose that I hadn't already put down on purpose. And now there was a woman handing me flowers and telling me my eggs were getting warm. I drove home with the ranunculus on the passenger seat. Gus was on the porch when I pulled up in his chair, cane across his lap, doing the crossword. He looked at the flowers before he looked at me. "Where'd you get those?" he said. "You know exactly where I got those." He tried to hide the grin. He is a terrible liar. His whole face is a confession. "Beautiful girl, isn't she?" he said. "Gus, I'm just saying. She's got a good business sense. Runs that stall alone, up before the sun, hauls those buckets herself. Strong girl. Kind, too. She helps me with my exercises, you know." I stopped on the porch steps. "What exercises?" He waved a hand. "The stretches. For the hip. The therapist lady only comes Tuesdays, and Lena's at the market Thursday, so she started walking me through the sheet after I buy my flowers. Nice of her. No charge. I did not know this. In 9 months of driving him to appointments and counting his pills and reading the fall prevention pamphlets, I did not know that a florist had been doing his physical therapy in the middle of a farmer's market on Thursday mornings. "Since when?" I said. "Since a while." He turned back to the crossword. 4 letters. Stubborn to a fault. Starts with O da. That's not funny. It fits, though. I went inside and put the flowers in a jar because we don't own a vase. And I stood at the sink for a minute, looking at them, feeling the hum come back on in that unplugged room. Just for a second. I turned it off. That night I found the notebook. Gus keeps his physical therapy log in a spiral notebook on the side table by his chair, next to the remote and a dish of butterscotch candies. I picked it up to move it so I could set down his tea, and it fell open in my hand. It wasn't what I expected. I expected numbers. Reps, dates, the boring stuff. And there was some of that in the shaky block letters the therapist filled in on Tuesdays. But the Thursday pages were different. Those were in a rounder, quicker hand, and they weren't just numbers. Somebody had written little notes in the margins. "Good balance today. Owen brought him. He looks tired. Tell him to sleep." Gus talked about Ruth the whole hour. He misses her. Ruth was my grandmother. She died when I was 19. Gus never talks about her to me. Not once in 9 months. Not at her birthday. Not at Christmas. Not when we drive past the church where they got married. And here was a stranger's handwriting saying he talked about Ruth the whole hour. I turned the page. And that's where the flower was. Pressed flat between 2 pages, dried and thin as paper, its color gone soft and rust brown with time. A single small blossom, the kind you'd have to know flowers to name, and I don't. It had been there long enough to leave a faint stain on the paper around it, a little ghost of itself. This wasn't a ranunculus, and it wasn't anything from Lena's stall that morning. It was much older. The paper it sat on had gone soft at the crease like it had been opened and closed 100 times. Somebody had carried this thing through years to get it here, into a physical therapy notebook, tucked between reps and margin notes, about a wife who's been gone since I was a teenager. I stared at it for longer than a dried flower deserves. Then I heard Gus's cane in the hall, and I closed the notebook fast, the way you close a drawer you weren't supposed to open, and I set it back on the side table exactly where it had been. "You find my tea," he said, coming around the corner. "Right here." I handed it to him. He sat down with a grunt and picked up the notebook without looking at it, the way you pick up something you've held 10,000 times, and set it on his lap. His hand rested on the cover. "You okay?" he said. "You look funny." "I'm fine." He studied me over his glasses. "Gus has this look. It's the look of a man who taught high school math for 31 years and can tell exactly who copied the homework. I've been getting that look my whole life." "You talked to Lena today," he said. It wasn't a question. I did. And nothing. She gave me flowers for you and told me my eggs were getting warm. He laughed. A real one from the belly, the kind that made him wince and hold his hip. "That's her," he said. "That's exactly her. Warm your eggs." Still chuckling. "You should go back Thursday." "I have work Thursday." "You have a prep period Thursday." "I've seen your schedule on the fridge." He had me there. He always has me there. "Gus," I said. "I know what you're doing." "I'm drinking tea." "You know what I mean. The wife thing. Telling her to keep an eye out. It's embarrassing. For both of us." He set his tea down, and for a second the crossword bit, and the game show bit, and the whole loud performance of him went quiet, and he looked at me the way he must have looked at those students who were failing and didn't know it yet. "You want to know what's embarrassing," he said. "Watching somebody you love stop wanting things. That's embarrassing. That's the thing that keeps an old man up at night." I didn't have anything for that. He picked his tea back up like nothing had happened. "Go to bed, Owen. You look tired. And close the window in the hall, it's supposed to storm." I went and closed the window. And I stood in the dark hallway for a minute with my hand on the latch, listening to him settle into his chair, the notebook on his lap, the flower pressed inside it, dried and brown and older than anything he was willing to say out loud. I told myself it was nothing. A dead flower in a notebook. A meddling old man. A florist with a smart mouth who'd said something strange over a bucket of dahlias and then told me to go home. I told myself the room was quiet and I liked it quiet. But you can't unplug the same refrigerator twice. Once you've heard the hum stop, part of you starts listening for it to come back. I looked at the fridge on my way to bed. At the schedule stuck there with a magnet shaped like a tomato. Thursday, second period, prep. A free hour, right there in my own handwriting, in the middle of the morning, at exactly the time a certain flower stall would be open in the middle of town. I stood there a while. Then I went to bed, and I did not sleep, and somewhere down the hall an old man and a pressed flower knew something I didn't, and I could already feel that my careful, quiet, safe little life had a crack running through it that I was not going to be able to sand smooth. I went back Thursday. I told myself it was for the flowers. Gus liked the ranunculus, and we were out, and I had a prep period, and a man can buy flowers for his grandfather without it meaning anything. I rehearsed that on the drive in. I even said it out loud in the truck, to nobody, like a witness statement I was getting straight before the trial. Lena watched me walk up. She didn't pretend she hadn't. "Back so soon," she said. "He's out of ranunculus. He was here Thursday. He bought a bunch Thursday." She was cutting stems while she talked, not looking up, that quick practiced snip. "You could just say you came back." "I came back for the ranunculus." "Sure." She wrapped a bunch in brown paper anyway. $3 a stem. "I'm charging you full price this time. You're not 84 and cute. You think Gus is cute. Everybody thinks Gus is cute. That's his whole thing." She handed the bundle across. "That's how he got you to drive 300 miles. I paid her. I had exactly no reason to keep standing there once the money changed hands, and I kept standing there anyway. She noticed. She let me. She went back to her buckets like a woman who'd decided the smartest thing to do with an awkward man was to leave him room to figure himself out. So that became the thing. Thursday mornings. I want to be clear that nothing happened, in the way people mean when they ask if something happened. I bought flowers. I made small talk. I learned the market the way you learn a place when you keep going back to it for a reason you won't name. The old guy 2 stalls down who sold honey and gave unsolicited weather predictions. The woman with the goat cheese who remembered everybody's dog. The way Lena's stall always smelled like cold water and green stems, even in the heat. And I learned her a little in pieces. She'd grown up 2 towns over. She'd had a real job once, something with spreadsheets and a lanyard, and she'd walked away from it, and she didn't explain that, and I didn't ask. She was 34. She ran the stall alone. She was up at 4 most mornings, which explained why she drank her coffee like it owed her money. She had opinions about everything, and delivered maybe 1/3 of them out loud, and you could see the other 2/3 happening behind her eyes, which was somehow worse. She was funny in a way that snuck up on you. Dry. Deadpan. She'd say something completely level, and then just wait, and you'd realize a second later she'd made a joke, and the second was the punchline. I liked her. I'll say that plainly, since I spent so long not saying it to myself. Here's the part I got wrong. I thought she felt sorry for me. It made sense in my head, the way things make sense when you've built your whole house on a bad foundation and stopped noticing the tilt. A guy moves home to take care of his grandfather. Gus goes around telling the whole market his grandson needs a wife. And here's this kind woman who helps the old man with his stretches for free, and now she's being nice to the sad grandson too, because that's what kind people do. They collect strays. I decided I was a stray. I decided the flowers and the banter were a form of charity, and I started bracing for the moment she'd get tired of it. So I kept it light. I kept it at arm's length. I'd take the flowers and crack a joke and leave before she could get bored of me first. Get out before the window. That was the whole strategy of my life by then, and I ran it on her without even knowing I was doing it. What I found out later, much later, is that she read all of that completely backwards. She thought I couldn't stand her. She thought I showed up out of obligation, bought the flowers Gus wanted, endured 2 minutes of a florist my grandfather had roped into his nonsense, and left as fast as I politely could. She noticed I always left first. She noticed I never quite finished a conversation. She had her own bad foundation, and on her blueprint, a man who keeps 1 foot pointed at the exit is a man counting the seconds until he can go. 2 people standing 3 feet apart every Thursday, each one certain the other one was just being nice about it. I think about that a lot now. How much of what wrecks us is just 2 scared people misreading the same silence? The proximity thing was Gus's fault, of course. It was always going to be Gus's fault. His hip was healing, and healing meant work, and the therapist only came Tuesdays, and the sheet of exercises had to happen every day whether anybody watched or not. Gus, left alone, did about half of them and lied about the rest. I knew this because I found the sheet with check marks in Tuesday's handwriting and blanks everywhere else. And because he told me the balance ones were handled in a tone that meant they were not handled. So I started staying home Thursday mornings when I could. Prep period, and then straight back to the house, because Lena had taken to swinging by after the market to walk him through the sheet. That's how I ended up hovering. I'd tell you I wasn't hovering, but Gus has photographic evidence, metaphorically speaking, of me hovering. I'd be in the kitchen, doing dishes that were already done. I'd be reorganizing the pill caddy that did not need reorganizing. I'd be right there, within earshot, while Lena counted him through his heel raises in the living room and told him to stop cheating. "You're not going all the way down," she'd say. "I'm going as far as the good Lord allows." "The good Lord allows more than that, Gus." Down, dot. "You're a hard woman. You're a soft old man with a stubborn hip." Down, dot. And I'd stand at the sink with my hands in cold water, listening to my grandfather laugh, and feel something I didn't have a name for and didn't want to name. One Thursday she caught me at it. She came into the kitchen for a glass of water, mid-session, and I was drying a bowl I'd dried twice already, and she stopped in the doorway and looked at me, and then looked at the bowl, and then back at me. "You can just come sit in the room," she said. "You don't have to guard the kitchen." "I'm not guarding the kitchen. You've been in here 40 minutes. There's one bowl." I put the bowl down. "He does better when you're not watching," she said gentler. "He shows off for you. Tries to skip the hard parts to look strong. He's honest with me because I don't count for anything. You count for something." It came out before I filtered it. I heard it land. She heard it land. For a second, neither of us did anything with it, and then she filled her glass and drank it and set it in the sink, right next to my dry bowl, and said, "Come sit in the room, Owen," and walked back out. I sat in the room. The B story, if you want to call it that, started with Ruth. It was another Thursday. Gus was on the floor mat doing the stretch he hated, the one for his hip flexor, and Lena was cross-legged beside him counting, and I was in the armchair pretending to grade quizzes. And out of nowhere, the way he does, Gus started talking. "Ruth used to make me do these," he said. "Not these exact ones, but this kind of thing. When my back went back in, the 80s. She'd get down on the floor with me and count. She was a terrible counter. She'd get distracted and lose the number and start over, and a set of 10 would take 20 minutes. Lena didn't stop counting, but she slowed down, made room for him. "She sounds patient," she said. She was not patient, Gus laughed. She was the least patient woman I ever met. That's why I married her. I was a coward, and she wasn't, and I figured if I stood next to her long enough, some of it would rub off. I put my pen down. I don't think either of them noticed. "How'd you meet?" Lena asked. She asked it easy, like it didn't matter, and I understood later that was a gift, that she gave him the easy version of the question, so he could take the hard version if he wanted it. "I didn't meet her," Gus said. "She met me. I want that on the record." He shifted on the mat, winced, kept going. "I was 22 and useless. Worked at the feed store. She came in for chicken wire and decided, right there, that I was going to walk her home. Didn't ask me. Told me. Said, 'You're walking me home,' and I said, 'Am I?' And she said, 'You are,' and that was it. 51 years. She just decided," Lena said. "She decided." He looked at the ceiling. "The thing nobody tells you is that somebody has to. Somebody has to decide. Two people can stand next to each other their whole lives being polite and scared, and nothing happens. Ruth wasn't scared. So she chose, and I let myself be chosen, and that was the smartest thing I ever did. Letting myself be chosen. He said it lightly. Threw it away, almost. But I caught it, and I think Lena caught it, because for a second the counting stopped and the whole room was just the sound of an old man breathing on a floor mat, remembering the bravest thing he ever did was stand still and let it happen. Then Gus said, "Am I done?" My hips declaring bankruptcy, and the moment folded itself back up, and Lena laughed and helped him up, and I picked my pen back up and did not grade a single quiz. I found out that day that Lena had her own version of the exit. It came out in the kitchen after, while Gus napped. She was rinsing her glass and I was putting flowers in the jar, and I asked her, careful, the way she'd asked Gus, the easy version. "You ever come close," I said, "to someone deciding on you? Or you deciding on someone?" She didn't answer right away. She turned the water off. "Once," she said. "A long time. Years. Everybody thought we'd get married. Including me." She dried her hands slow. "And then one day I realized I'd been waiting the whole time for him to leave. Like, actively. I had a bag packed in my head. I'd been so ready for it to end that I never once let it be good. And he felt that. Of course he felt that. You can't love somebody with one hand on the door." She hung the towel back. "So he left. Which is what I'd been preparing for. So I got to be right. Being right about that is the worst thing that ever happened to me." I didn't say anything. "I'm not telling you that for sympathy," she said, and there was an edge to it, quick and defensive, and I recognized the edge because I had one exactly like it. "I'm telling you so you know I'm not out here fixing sad men. I don't fix people. I couldn't even fix that. I didn't think you were fixing me, I lied. She looked at me. That look that saw 2/3 of everything and said 1/3. Sure, she said. And she picked up her market bag and left, and I stood in the kitchen holding a jar of somebody else's flowers, realizing I'd just watched a woman describe my exact disease and call it hers. One hand on the door. She'd said it like a diagnosis. And I'd been standing there the whole time, thinking she was the healthy one. The night it turned was nobody's plan. She'd stayed late. Gus had gone down early, worn out, and there was a storm sitting on the town the way summer storms do, all pressure and no rain, and Lena's van wouldn't start. Dead battery. She called it, tried it twice, and it just clicked at her, and she said a word Gus would have pretended to be scandalized by. I've got cables, I said. I did not have cables. I went and looked, and I did not have cables, and by the time I'd established this beyond doubt it had finally started to rain, hard, the kind that comes down like it's got somewhere to be. So we ended up on the porch. Waiting it out. Her van dead in the driveway, the two of us in the two chairs, Gus's decorated cane leaning in the corner where he'd left it, and the rain coming off the roof in a sheet. Neither of us said anything for a while. It was the first quiet between us that didn't feel like a countdown. Your grandfather, she said finally, is going to be insufferable about this. About what? The van. The rain. Us stuck on a porch. She pulled her knees up into the chair. He's going to think he did it. He probably prayed for a dead battery. He absolutely prayed for a dead battery. She laughed. Not the dry one. A real one, surprised out of her, and she covered her mouth like the sound had embarrassed her, and looked out at the rain instead of at me. And I thought, oh no. I recognized it. That specific oh no. I'd had it exactly once before, 4 years and one kitchen table ago, and I'd promised myself I was done having it, and here it was anyway, uninvited, arriving on a porch in a rainstorm over a woman covering her mouth. What, she said. She'd caught me looking. Nothing. You had a face. I don't have a face. You had a whole face, Owen. She turned toward me in the chair. The porch light was doing something soft to her. She still had rain in her hair from the run up the steps. What? And here's the thing I did, the thing that surprised me more than anything Gus ever pulled. I didn't leave first. I didn't crack the joke and get out before the window. I sat there with the whole face on and let her see it. I keep coming back on Thursdays, I said. I know. I sell you flowers. Gus has ranunculus coming out of every jar in that house. We have flowers in the bathroom. I'm not coming back for flowers. She went very still. The rain kept coming. Okay, she said, quiet. Not the market okay. A different okay, one that didn't close a door but held it open a crack, waiting to see what I'd do with it. I didn't have a plan for what came next. I'd used up my whole nerve on the one sentence. And the truth is, I never got to find out what I would have said, because that's exactly when the porch light hit the puddle in the driveway just so, and Lena went very quiet in a different way, looking past me and said, in a voice that had lost all its dry, Owen. Is that Gus's window open? I turned around. Up on the second floor in the dark, the curtain in Gus's room was moving in the wind and rain. Wide open. The window I closed every single night. The window an old man with a healing hip and no business on his feet in a storm would have had to get up and open himself. And the light in his room was off. I don't remember getting up the stairs. I remember the flowers, though. That's the stupid thing your brain grabs in a moment like that. I'd left the ranunculus on the porch rail, and I remember thinking, absurdly, that they'd get rained on, right as I was taking the steps 2 at a time with my heart in my throat. The bathroom door was open and empty, and the hallway was dark. Gus. Nothing. I hit his bedroom door with my shoulder harder than I meant to. And there he was, down on the floor by the window on his side in his pajama pants and one sock, with the curtain snapping wet above him and rain coming in across the sill onto the back of his neck. Gus. Don't. His voice came out thin, but it came out. Don't you dare tell Lena I fell. I have never in my life felt relief and fury arrive at the exact same second. He was talking. He was arguing. He was, even down on the floor in the rain, worried about his reputation with the florist. "You absolute lunatic," I said, and I was on my knees next to him, hands going everywhere, his shoulder, his arm, his hip, checking for the wrong angle. "What were you doing?" The window was stuck. The window was closed. I closed it. It smelled like rain. He winced when I got near his side. I wanted to smell the rain. Lena came in behind me. I felt her more than heard her, that fast, quiet way she moved, and then she was down on the floor on Gus's other side with her hand flat on his chest, not panicking, counting something under her breath. "Gus. Look at me. Does anything feel sharp?" Her voice was level. "Market level. Down, Gus level. Sharp or dull? Tell me true." "Dull," he said. "Everything's dull. I'm 84. The hip. The new hip. Sharp or dull?" He thought about it. That pause took a year off my life. "Dull," he said. I landed on the arm. Not the hip. I turned so I wouldn't land on the hip. Lena let out a breath I didn't know she'd been holding. "Okay. Good. That's good, you stubborn old goat. That's the one smart thing you did tonight." She looked up at me across him. Rain on her face. "We don't move him. We call somebody who knows how." So we called. And we waited on that floor, the three of us, while the rain came in the open window because nobody wanted to leave him to close it, and I held my grandfather's hand and he squeezed back too hard, the grip of a man pretending harder than he was hurt. The rest of that night is a blur of fluorescent light and forms on a clipboard. Bruised, not broken. That was the verdict. Hours later, a doctor half my age telling me my grandfather had landed on soft old tissue and gotten lucky, that the hip held, that the hairline they were worried about on the first scan was an old healed thing from decades back. Observation overnight. Home tomorrow if his numbers behaved. He was fine. I want to be honest about what that word did to me though, because fine is a liar's word. He was fine. He was also on a floor in the rain because he wanted to smell it, and his body wouldn't cooperate, and there was no version of the future where that got easier. He was fine tonight. He was 84 every night. I'd built my whole return around the story that Gus was indestructible, that he'd outlive us all, that I'd moved home for a project with a happy ending. And a wet curtain had just shown me the other story, the true one, the one where the healthiest man I knew was still a man and men run out. I sat in a plastic chair in a hallway that smelled like disinfectant and thought about that for a long time. Lena stayed. She didn't have to. She had a stall to open in 5 hours and a body that got up at 4, and she sat in the plastic chair next to mine and didn't say anything smart for once. Around 2 in the morning, she got us both coffee from a machine that made something coffee adjacent, and she handed me mine and sat back down and finally said, "He's going to be insufferable about this, you know. He got to smell the rain and survive it. That's a story he tells for a year." I laughed. It came out wrong, half a sob riding on it, and she pretended not to notice, which was the kindest thing she could have done. "I keep thinking about the window," I said. "Don't. I close it every night. I do the rounds. Door stove, his pills by the bed window. Every night. And tonight I was on the porch. I turned the bad coffee in my hands. I was on the porch telling you about flowers while he was on the floor. Owen, if I'd gone in 10 minutes earlier. If he'd waited 10 minutes to be an idiot." She turned in the chair to face me. "You want to hear something? I've been helping old people get strong again for 4 years. Before the flowers. That was the spreadsheet job I don't talk about, sort of, close enough. And the thing nobody warns you about is that you cannot love somebody out of being old. You can help. You can be there. You cannot stand between a person and their own life." He wanted to smell the rain. He's a whole grown man who decided to smell the rain. That's not yours to have prevented. I looked at her. 2 in the morning. Rain still going outside a window with the blinds down. Her hair had dried in the shape of the storm. "That's the most words you've ever said to me in a row," I said. "Don't get used to it." But something had come loose. In both of us, I think. You sit on a floor with someone in the rain and hold a dying summer-day man's hand, and it burns off whatever it is you usually hold between yourself and another person. The armor. The exit routes. There wasn't room for the arm's-length thing anymore. It had been left back at the house with the ranunculus. "Can I tell you the thing I actually came back for tonight?" I said. "Before all this." "You told me. You're not coming back for flowers." "That's not the thing." I set the coffee on the floor. "I stopped for about 4 years doing this. The thing where you tell somebody the true sentence. I had it once. A woman, a kitchen table, a whole plan for a life. And she looked at the plan one day and decided it wasn't the one she wanted, and she was right to. Honestly, we'd have been miserable. But I didn't come out of it heartbroken. I came out of it careful. I decided the safest thing was to never be the one who wanted it more. Never let anybody see the true sentence. Get out before the window. You keep saying that. The window dot. The moment somebody could look at you and see you meant it. I close it. I've been closing windows on people for 4 years. I looked at her. I closed one on you every single Thursday. I'd say the true thing halfway, and then make a joke of it, and leave before you could answer. Lena was quiet for a second. Then, very carefully, like she was setting something fragile down, she said, "I thought you couldn't stand me." "I know that now." "No, listen." She turned all the way in the chair. "The whole time. I thought Gus roped me into being nice to his sad grandson, and you tolerated it, and you left as fast as you could every week because you didn't want a florist your grandfather picked out. I have my own 4 years, Owen. I had a whole life set up 2 towns over, a job, a fiancé, a lanyard, and I found out he'd been keeping a second version of himself in a different phone. And I didn't cry over that man for long. I just went careful after him, quietly the way you do. I decided the safest thing was to never let anybody's grandfather set me up as a mercy case." She almost smiled. "We're the same idiot. We've been standing 3 feet apart for 2 months, both of us certain we were the one being tolerated. I don't know how to explain what that did. 2 people find out at the same time that they'd each been braced for a rejection the other one was never going to give. That's a terrible way to live," I said. "It's efficient. Nobody ever gets to hurt you if you leave first. Nobody ever gets to anything if you leave first." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she picked her coffee back up, because we'd gotten close to the edge of something, and she needed a second, and I let her have it, and outside the rain finally started to let up. The town knew by breakfast. Of course it did. I'd forgotten how a small town metabolizes a thing. By the time I got Gus home the next afternoon, the honey guy from the market had already the jar on the porch with a note, and Dolores, the bingo cheater, had called the house twice, and someone had told someone that Gus Pratt collapsed in a storm and had to be carried out, which was 3 sizes too big, and when Gus heard it, delighted him. "Carried out," he said from his chair, working it like a man test driving a car. "Who carried me? Do they say who carried me? Nobody carried you. You walked to the car. They don't need to know that." But the other thing the town knew, the thing that came riding in on the same wave, was that the woodshop teacher and the flower girl had sat in a hospital together till dawn. And a small town does not let that go. By Thursday I couldn't buy a coffee without a look. The goat cheese woman asked after Gus, and then in the same breath with a straight face asked how my Lena was doing, like the possessive had already been notarized. I'd have hated it once. The whole town watching. Everybody with a stake in whether I let myself have something. That was exactly the kind of audience I'd spent 4 years closing windows against. The strange part is it didn't make me want to leave. It made me want to be worth the gossip. Gus, though. Gus was the reckoning I'd been putting off. Because here's what I hadn't let myself land on, in all of it. He set this up. He walked into a flower stall months ago and pointed a woman at his own grandson like a man aiming a slingshot, and then he pretended it was a coincidence, and then he fell out a window and made her stay all night and put us on a floor together where the armor couldn't survive. I'd been carried along by it. And some ugly small part of me, the careful part, wanted to be angry at him for it. For deciding my life, for not asking me first, for the whole business of meddling. I brought it to him on the third night home, when he was steadier and I was raw enough to say it. "You set me up," I said. I was fixing the window latch so it wouldn't stick again, not looking at him on purpose. "With Lena. You planned the whole thing." "I did, no shame at all. The man does the crossword in pen. You didn't ask me. You'd have said no." "That's my no to say, Gus." He was quiet behind me. I heard the chair creak, that particular creak of him leaning forward, and when I turned around he wasn't doing the twinkle thing, the game show thing. He was looking at me the way he almost never does, straight on and suddenly old. "Sit down," he said. "The latch'll keep." I sat. "You know how your grandmother and me happened," he said. "You met at a dance. That's the story we told at parties. Here's the one we didn't." He folded his hand. "I was a coward, Owen. Younger than you. I liked her for a year, and I never said a word, because I'd figured out the same thing you figured out, that if you never reach for it, you never drop it. I let 2 other fellas ask her to that dance before I did. I was going to let a third." He shook his head. "And your great-aunt Ruth, God rest her, grabbed me by the collar behind the church and told me I was going to lose the best thing that would ever happen to me, because I was too proud to be seen wanting it. And she marched me over. Physically marched me. I did not choose your grandmother, son. I got shoved at her by a woman who loved me and could see I was too scared to move. I didn't say anything." 51 years, he said. 51 years with that woman, because somebody who loved me refused to watch me close the window. And when she died, I didn't get careful. That's the thing I want you to hear. I lost her, and I did not decide to never want anything again. I decided I'd been the luckiest coward alive, and that I owed it to Ruth, and to your grandmother, and to the whole business of being alive, to shove the next scared person I loved right at the thing they wouldn't reach for." He looked at me. "You're the next scared person I love," he said. "So I shoved you. I'd do it again. I'll do it from the grave if I have to." The window latch ticked as it cooled. Rain had stopped. The whole house was quiet in that way houses get when somebody's finally said the true thing out loud. "I let myself be chosen," Gus said softer now. "That's the only brave thing I ever did. Everything good in my life came from letting somebody love me hard enough to push. And I have watched you, for 9 months, guard a door nobody's even trying to break down. That girl is not a mercy case, Owen. She isn't being nice to the sad grandson. I watched your face the first day you walked up to that stall. I know what a person looks like when they've been shoved at something good. I sat there and I saw it. Finally. The door I'd been standing in front of for 4 years, one hand on it, braced against a push that had already come and gone. Lena on a hospital floor telling me we were the same idiot. Gus on a bedroom floor in the rain, still trying to marry me off with his last conscious thought. My grandmother, some girl at a dance 60 years gone, chosen by a coward who got shoved into being brave. I'd spent 4 years making sure nobody could ever push me. And it turned out the pushing was the whole point. The pushing was love. I'd been calling it meddling, because meddling was easier to be angry at than to be grateful for. I'm not angry, I said. It surprised me how true it was. I thought I was going to be angry. I know. Gus leaned back. The twinkle came home to his eyes. You're not smart enough to be angry at me for long. You get that from your grandmother. I laughed, and it was clean this time, no sob under it. But knowing a thing and doing it are two different animals. I could see the door now. I could see my own hand on it. That's not the same as opening it. Lena had said the true sentence to me at 2 in the morning on a hospital floor, and I'd let her pick her coffee back up instead of answering it, and she'd gone home to her stall at 4 and we hadn't finished it, and now 3 days of gossip and a grandfather's confession stood between me and a market where a woman was waiting to find out whether I was a man who left first. Gus watched me thinking. You know what you have to do, he said. It wasn't a question. Yeah, I said. I think I finally do. The thing was, I'd have to go do it in front of the whole watching town, at a flower stall, in daylight, with no armor and no exit and no joke to hide behind. The window all the way open. And for the first time in 4 years, standing in my grandfather's rain-quiet house. I wasn't looking for a way to close it before she could see me mean it. I went to the market the next morning. No plan. No speech. That's the part I want to be honest about, because the version of me from 4 years ago would have written it out. Would have rehearsed the exit line in case it went bad. This time I just got up before the alarm, made Gus his coffee the way he likes it, too strong, and told him where I was going. He didn't do the twinkle. He just nodded, once, the way you nod at somebody heading off to do a hard thing you already know they can do. Take the flowers, he said. What flowers? The ones on the porch. The ones you left out in the rain like a fool. They're half dead. Bring them, anyway. I looked at him. Trust me, he said. A florist knows what it means when you bring a woman back the flowers she sold you, half dead, because you couldn't throw them out. That's the whole thing, son. That's you all over in a fist of dead flowers. So I took the ranunculus. Wet, browning at the edges, still knotted in the paper she'd wrapped them in on Thursday, the paper gone soft. I drove into town with them on the passenger seat like a person. I sat in the truck in the market lot for a while first. I won't pretend I didn't. Engine off, dead flowers on the seat, hands on the wheel, doing the old math. There was still a version of the morning where I turned around and went home and texted her something clever and safe that put the whole thing back at arm's length. My whole body wanted that version. 4 years of muscle memory, and every fiber of it said the same soft, reasonable thing. Don't let them watch you want it. Then I thought about a man who fell down and made a woman stay all night, just so I'd have to sit next to her with the armor off. And I turned the key the rest of the way off and got out of the truck. The market on a Saturday is the whole town in one field. I'd forgotten that too, or maybe I'd been counting on the crowd of a Thursday and hadn't thought about how much bigger a weekend is. Every stall, every stroller, the honey guy, the goat cheese woman, the man who sells the birdhouses nobody needs. Dolores at the bingo booth. The whole audience I'd spent 4 years arranging my life to avoid. And there was the flower stall. There was Lena. She had her back half to me, cutting stems, that quick clean motion, dropping the cut ends in a bucket. Bucket of ranunculus, right there in front of her. Same flower. She hadn't seen me yet. I want to tell you my heart was steady. It wasn't. I stood at the edge of the field with dead flowers in my hand, and every instinct I owned stood up at once and said the same thing it had said for 4 years. Leave. Text her later. Do it small, do it safe, do it where nobody can watch you mean it. I thought about Gus on a bedroom floor in the rain, still trying to marry me off. And I walked over. She heard the paper before she saw the flowers. She turned, scissors still in her hand, and she looked at what I was holding, and then she looked at me, and the scissors went very still. Those are dead, she said. They are. You paid $4 for those on Thursday. I did. She set the scissors down. Slow. She wasn't smiling yet. She was reading me the way she read Gus's hip, sharp or dull, tell me true. Owen. What are you doing, Dot? And here it was. The window all the way open. Daylight, a field full of the whole town, the goat cheese woman already gone quiet 2 stalls down, my grandfather's voice in my head saying, let yourself be chosen, and no joke anywhere and reach to duck behind. I came to finish the sentence, I said. From the hospital. You said it and I picked my coffee back up instead of answering, and then I let 3 days go by, and I'm not doing that anymore. I put the dead flowers down on her table, gentle like they mattered, because they did. I don't want to be the one who leaves first. Not with you. I've been closing a window on you every Thursday for 2 months and I'm done. I'd rather you see me want it than never show you at all. The field kept moving around us. Somewhere a kid was crying about a balloon. But the stall had gone into that little pocket of quiet 2 people make when the rest of the world stops mattering. That's a lot of words, she said. Her voice wasn't quite level. For a man who usually leaves before the good part. Gus says I get the words from my grandmother. Something moved across her face then. She looked down at the dead ranunculus on her table. Reached out and touched one browning petal with one finger. The way you'd touch something you weren't sure was real. You brought them back, she said. Quiet. I couldn't throw them out. I don't know why. They've been on the porch rail 3 days looking at me. She was quiet for a second. Then she reached under the table, into the little cash box where she kept her receipts and her spare rubber bands and the small things, and she took something out, and she held it flat on her palm across the table for me to see. It was a flower. A single ranunculus, pressed flat and dry and gone the color of old paper, older than 3 days, older than anything that had happened between us this week. You know what this is, she said. A pressed flower. It's the first one you ever bought. She wasn't looking at me now. She was looking at it. First Thursday. You came up with Gus, and Gus did all the talking, and you stood there like you'd rather be anywhere else, and you bought one flower because he made you, and you handed it to him in the truck. I watched you, and then 2 weeks later I found it in the notebook. What notebook? Gus's PT notebook. The one he brings so I can log his exercises. She looked up. He'd pressed it in the back. Your flower. Between the page for hip flexion and a phone number for his cardiologist. And I thought, that old man is running a whole operation, and his grandson doesn't even know he's in it. Her mouth did something that wasn't quite a smile. So I took it out and I pressed it properly. In my own book. Because I'm apparently exactly as much of an idiot as you are. I stood there and I couldn't say anything for a second. 2 months. Both of us. A flower neither of us bought on purpose, save twice, by 2 people, each certain they were the only fool at the stall. You kept it, I said. I kept it. Why? She looked at me then, straight on, and she dropped the last of it, the marked voice, the sharp thing, the armor she wore even better than I wore mine. Because the first time you walked up to my stall you looked at me like I was a chore your grandfather assigned you, she said. And I decided I didn't care what you thought. And then I found your flower in an old man's exercise book, and I realized I did care. I'd cared the whole time, and I hated it, because I'd promised myself I would never again want something a person's family arranged for me. She swallowed. I've been standing at this table on Thursdays wanting you to stay, and being furious that I wanted it. So don't you dare come here with dead flowers and be brave at me, and then leave, Owen. I mean it. If you're doing this, do it. Don't open the window and climb back out. I'm not climbing out. Say it plain. I did. No joke. No exit. I want you, I said. I've been fighting it since Thursday 1, because he picked you, and I didn't want the thing I was handed, honestly. But I do. I want the Thursdays and the stall, and the way you talk to my grandfather, like he's a stubborn goat you happen to love. I want to be the one who stays. I'm choosing you, Lena, out loud, in front of the whole nosy town, and I'm asking you to choose me back. The goat cheese woman, 2 stalls down, made a sound like a kettle. Lena laughed. Wet sudden, her hand coming up to cover her mouth the way a person does when the laugh is realer than they meant to show. And then she came around the table. Around the bucket, around the dead flowers, around 2 months of standing 3 feet apart, and she stopped close enough that I could see her breathing wasn't steady either. You're a lot of work, she said. I know. You leave before the good part. Not anymore. You bring a woman dead flowers as a romantic gesture. Gus's idea. Of course it was. She was still holding the pressed flower in one hand, the old one, careful not to crush it. She looked at it, and she looked at me, and she made her choice the way she does everything, plainly, no performance for the field. Okay, she said. Okay? Yes, you idiot. Okay. I choose you back. Now stop talking, the goat cheese woman is going to faint. And she kissed me. In daylight. In the middle of the market. With the whole town watching and the honey guy actually clapping, God help us, and the pressed flower held safe 2 fingers against the back of my neck. I'd spent 4 years making sure nobody would ever see me want anything. I let the whole town watch. The rest is quiet. Good things usually are. We didn't run off anywhere. There's no airport in this story, no dramatic ending, no rain. We just started being 2 people who stopped pretending on Thursdays. She'd come by after the market and help me get Gus through his exercises, and Gus would narrate the whole thing, like a sports announcer, insufferable, exactly as promised, telling anyone who'd listen that he carried himself out of that storm, and also personally arranged the entire romance from a hospital floor. He put both flowers in the notebook, mine and hers side by side, pressed flat in the back of the PT log between hip flexion and the cardiologist's number. He showed everybody. He'd flip to that page like a man showing off grandchildren. "That's the first one," he'd say, tapping the browner one. "That's the one that started it." He didn't even know he was doing it. "You made me buy it," I'd say. "I make you do a lot of things. Look how they turn out." I stopped arguing with him about it. He earned the victory lap. A man doesn't get to be right about the biggest thing in your life and not gloat. There was a night a few weeks in when I found him at the window. The same window. Open, of course, because he'll never learn, and I'd finally stopped trying to make him. He wasn't on the floor this time. He was in his chair, pulled up close, just breathing the night air with his eyes shut. "Smelling the rain?" I asked. "No rain tonight." He didn't open his eyes. "Just smelling. She used to sit right here, your grandmother. This window. She said the whole day washed off her at this window." He was quiet a moment. "I sat next to her at this window for 51 years because a woman named Ruth grabbed me by the collar and wouldn't let me be a coward. And now my fool grandson's got a florist because I fell down and made her stay. Somebody's always got to do the shoving." He opened his eyes and looked at me. "You'll do it for somebody someday. That's how it keeps going. You get shoved, and then you shove. I'm not planning on shoving anybody, Gus. You'll see." He shut his eyes again, satisfied, an old man at a window his wife loved, having gotten exactly what he wanted, which was to see the next scared person he loved stop guarding the door. "You'll see." He was right. He usually is. So that's the story of how my grandfather told a florist I needed a wife, and was correct, and I spent 2 months certain I was the one being tolerated, while she spent 2 months certain of the same thing. Both of us pressing the same flower in secret, both of us braced for a rejection the other was never going to give. What I carried out of it is the thing I didn't understand at 36 and understand now. I thought guarding the door was strength. I thought the careful ones, the ones who never reach so they never drop it, the ones who leave first so nobody can leave them, I thought we were the smart ones. We're just scared with good posture. And the whole time I was standing there with one hand braced against the door, there were people on the other side who loved me enough to push. A grandfather who fell out a window. A great-aunt 60 years gone who grabbed a coward by the collar. A woman at a flower stall who kept my accidental flower in a book and hated herself for it. Letting the people who love you help you be chosen isn't weakness. It took me 4 years and an old man on a wet floor to learn it. Sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is stop guarding the door. So, let me ask you. What would you have done if your own grandfather walked up to a stranger and told her you needed someone and pointed her right at you without asking first? Would you have been angry at the meddling like I was? Or would you have let yourself be shoved toward the thing you were too scared to reach for? Have you ever had someone love you enough to push you towards something good and only realized much later what they'd done for you? Tell me your story down in the comments. I read them. I really do. And if this one meant something to you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.